Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome Jacklyn Bookshester, a charming poet of my acquaintance, a woman who I've heard do many, many excellent poems, and she's also an actress and is working on that as well. Do you have other art forms, Jacklyn?
I have some visual art. I've done a lot of drawing, painting, and right now I'm taking a class in sculpture. I've been doing that for probably a year, almost a year.
Excellent.
So you can find me on Instagram and see some of those.
Well, I'm going to ask you a question that I know I find difficult to answer. So I
Okay.
always like to ask tough questions of intelligent people. Do you have a favorite medium?
Uh,
Or
no,
is it as the mood fits?
yeah. I definitely don't. And when I'm doing what I'm doing, I'm really involved in what I'm doing, and I move from one thing to the other. And Stone Soup Poetry, where we connected. I focus just on that, and it's a nice reprieve from doing the kind of visual, trying to do the visual stuff because there's a little more frame you're working with versus constantly doing something until it's done. You have to have a complete form. So I like that. That's why I like poetry because you really have to get concise and that's it. That's the piece versus painting where you can go on and on and on and on until you're it's right to finish and
Exhausted or your
off
paint
and you
run
go,
out?
what is that?
I said, or you're exhausted or your paint runs out.
Yeah, or exhausted, your paint runs out, or you kind of lost the the part that was the best, and then you keep going, you go over it, and then you're, oh, I wish I stopped. So with poetry, you're not limited by that. So you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. I started out as a sketch artist and painter and sculptor. And when I started making music, I just was absolutely moved by classical music. I The school I attended took every first grader to the symphony orchestra in Pittsburgh, and I heard an all Tchaikovsky show, and it just tore me up. I was sitting in the back sobbing. And the principal comes over to me. She said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "The music. It's so beautiful." And she goes, "Well, yeah, but what's wrong?" And I said, "The music. He was in such pain." Now, I didn't know a darn thing about Tchaikovsky,
Uh-huh.
but it just seemed to me that a person who wrote that music had to have been very, very sad. And so I felt that sympathy. And I started playing trumpet very young, and I thought music was the way I was going to go. And then when I was in high school, I met people who were doing performance light art, adding light to music, slides, liquid light, like the amoeba stuff, that you may have seen in Pink Floyd concerts kind of thing. So yeah, 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 reminiscent. And that to me then seemed perfect. But over the years, I've discovered I call myself an information artist. Sometimes text, sometimes video, sometimes sculpture, sometimes words. So I manipulate information and repurpose it.
And you know some stuff about recording and
Yeah,
everything.
I
That
spent
must really help with multimedia.
yeah, I ended up this is kind of funny. I went out to a meditation festival out west. Now here I am, I'm a poet light show artist. That was what I was doing for a living. And I thought, this is fine, but how the hell you can't survive on art light show money. It's ephemeral, And I decided I was going to go into the mountains and do a wait for the dream, the Native American dream search, right?
Mhm.
And I go up in the mountains, I just me and a notebook and a sleeping bag, and I wake up in the morning and there's an Indian, a Native American, walking up the path on the top of this mountain, just me and him and a lot of forest. And he stops at the foot of my sleeping bag and said, "I dreamt about you last night." Now I thought he was putting me on. I figured my friends down in the valley had set it up. And he said, "Well, I was coming from Arizona. We were in Utah." He said, "I dreamt about you last night, and you're going to go back to Miami and get a job in television." And I started to tell him how impossible that was. How I had friends that were trying to get in television, friends that even had broadcast engineering degrees, couldn't get hired. I said, "It's impossible." Long story short, I got hired to work in a TV studio
That's,
and ended up
that's
getting trained as a video editor.
oh wow, that's an ex amazing experience. It's
It was
unreal.
absolutely crazy. But I went on and did more light shows, laser shows, and all that stuff. So, but anyway,
Cool.
enough about me. Um, so you do other arts as well as your poetry, the acting, the painting,
I'm
sculpting.
taking an
Um,
acting class. I'm just taking an acting class. I haven't applied yet for roles. I need to do a monologue and tape that, videotape that, in whatever form they need in order to send it. So I'm actively ta acting because I'm taking the class and we do that. But that's where I am at that.
well,
That's
I'm going to
very
be generous and say working on being an actor is acting.
okay.
So
Thank you. I'll
I'm
take that.
I try to be a generous fellow. All right, let
Okay,
me ask you this.
sure.
When you think back to your childhood, what's the earliest book that you can remember?
Earliest, probably Pat the Bunny.
Okay.
You know, with the
Okay.
little, do you know it has a little window and the furs on the front? And
Okay.
so it's kind of sensory. You pat the bunny. I don't remember the words inside. I just remember it's kind of pink and white, and there's a little bunny texture.
Okay. Okay.
There's other books I remember, but that's probably the first. That one
Okay.
is Good Night Moon.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good.
that one
Good.
too. Yeah, that has the same kind of multi-sensory kind of thing.
Now, let me ask you this. When you were in school, did you were you involved in a literary group or the newsletter or did you write for the yearbook, any of that stuff?
No, I never had those kind of accolades, um, high school or college. But I did, yeah, no, I didn't reach that far. I did field hockey, which is sort of extracurricular. I did that from sixth grade to 12th grade, but I didn't continue into college.
Okay. When you think back to your young years, was writing even on your horizon? Did you think of yourself as wanting to be a writer?
No, for college, I went to Sarah Lawrence College, and writing was is sort of, the whatever you do, writing will be part of it. So whatever the essay I wrote in order to get in was all just kind of I applied last minute. I was actually going to go to Evergreen State College out west, and my parents met somebody who insisted that I guess they knew I've always liked to write, so that's a more literary sort of education. So yeah, writing was part of the curriculum, but I never thought of myself as a writer. Although I've written poems when I was little, when I was younger. So I've always taken it up, but I never in a format, like never in a curriculum, like just specifically writing. I
So
did
you wrote
music
for your own amusement and maybe for your friends?
mostly for my own working out my own troubles.
I have a neighbor, a woman in her 80s, who, when she heard about all my appearances in my International Poetry Association, she said, "That's really interesting. I have never shown anyone any of my poetry." I said, "Are you kidding?" So here she is, 80 years old, and had been writing since she was a kid, even before college, and she had never shown anybody. So I talked her into coming on to Finn Hall's Blot from the Blue, and she read her own poetry aloud for the first time to someone.
Wow.
She was blown away, and she was encouraged by the other poets there. You know, don't belittle yourself. Appreciate what you can do. And she ended up deciding to put a book together. So I helped her get her first book together.
That's wonderful. What was the content?
A lot of it is devotional stuff. She's
Okay.
a very religious person, and she spent her professional life after she did some missionary work in the Far East. She was a first grade teacher for
Okay.
20 plus years.
So she included personal experience into her poems.
Yeah. But
So
mostly she writes about faith.
so
Her,
it's
her
kind of educational.
uh, She not
No?
was she's a very devout religious Christian,
Okay.
and she includes her work is very very prayerful, and my own polyglot of religious and philosophical training, uh, I I I helped her edit it, and mostly by making suggestions as to which to include and which were too much more written prayers rather than just salutatory stuff. But she was very happy with what she put together, and she, made enough for her family and friends, and sold several through her church.
There's some really good information on that with the women's spirituality and Christianity, and it's beautiful. Their kind of communion with God, and you wonder, is this just the pressures of the society at large that makes them so spiritual, or do they actually have sort of like you had with the kind of shamanistic um, and Native American in
Yeah,
the woods, that
very different approaches. But
yeah.
we had a good time talking together. She's I would say been very close to the religious missionary side of Christianity. Uh, she went and taught at a Christian school in the Philippines in the back
Oh,
in the forest. So she met her Marine husband when she was in the Philippines. So it's a very interesting story. Okay, next question.
okay.
Um, and you look back to your young life when you're thinking about this Jacklyn person can be a writer. What authors made an impression on your young self?
That's a big question. Um,
I only ask
but,
tough questions of my intelligent guests.
well, the allegory of Plato's allegory was so interesting to me. The metaphor of the people chained in the dark and getting outside into the light and then going back into the darkness. I really like that. Um, I liked a little bit of Shakespeare, a little bit of that in high school, just one literary class. Um, what do I like? Mist of Avalon, the Red Tent. Those are through the women's perspective, sort of biblical women's perspective. I like the anarchy, Emma Goldman, sort of anarchist
Ah,
literature.
good stuff. Good
Yeah.
stuff.
I'm trying to read, is it Henrik or Henrik Ibsen?
Yeah,
I have that right here.
yeah. Good
And
stuff.
I've seen like bits of it, but I've never read it. So I'm thinking I should read that.
There's a
And,
very good film with Steve McQueen as the protagonist of The Enemy of the People.
and
It's
I'm
probably
reading
available on YouTube because I'm sure it wasn't a popular film.
I know a lot of things aren't popular films, but they're plays that are, they're boring to people, but because it doesn't have all the sex, drugs,
Hardly any
rock and roll.
explosions in it at all.
My psychiatrist, I won't mention who he is, but I have a psychiatrist, and he wrote a pretty neat book, so I'm trying to get through that, and that has at the beginning of the book, he's describing sort of his work within the system, and then he compares the that sort of literature, if that's literature, it is literature to casework and institutions and stuff, and then to different monsters in society. So he, like Frankenstein and the vampires and werewolves and then he likes mythology and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
So what is it? The mirror has a thousand faces, that kind of thing. Is that
Yeah.
what? Yeah. Um, that's from my college. And yeah, I like The Color Purple. I'm looking at my books right now, The Color Purple. And this I have to read or read it for oh, you can't see. Oh, isn't that weird? You can't see because I have something in the background. But it's
Yeah.
called Audition by Michael Shurtleff. And it's a famed Broadway and Hollywood casting director revealing everything an actor needs to know to get the part. So introduction by Bob Fosse. So that's sort of the Bible of the place that I'm taking classes at the acting studio in Chicago.
Oh, cool.
That, and then I spoke to you earlier, so I've got also The Merchant of Venice and Julius Caesar. I just got those on Amazon
Yeah, good.
because I'm looking for a monologue, and I
Yeah.
spoke to you earlier about that. And so those two hopefully will help me and get back to Shakespeare a little bit because Shakespeare's really beautiful. It really the way you have to way they have to be so profound and articulate and everything. It's probably a really good place to start as far as monologues. Anyhow, is that enough?
Yeah,
Oh,
that's good.
these are my two. You want to know one of my favorite books?
Absolutely.
It's called Food, Sex, and Pollution. And I should change the
Wow.
background so I can show you. But it's A New Guinea Religion by Anna Meigs when I took anthropology in college.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's so interesting. It's how food has sort of prowess in it. And like as you get older, a woman becomes more male and eats more male related foods. And it's the whole religion based on the pollutants and
Wow.
food. Yeah, I love that book. And
Interesting.
and The Art of War. I've
Oh,
got that
yeah,
one
Sun
up
Tzu.
there.
Yeah,
That
good
one's
stuff.
that one's really good. Yeah. And then some
Okay.
other things. Yeah, trying to get through. Trying to revisit.
Well, in fact, one of the questions that I typically ask toward the end is what books are open on your desk right now?
That was it. That was it. The book by my psychiatrist, Ibsen, Audition, Merchants of Venice, Julius Caesar, Art of War, Living My Life, Food, Sex, and Pollution, The Republic of Plato, and then a couple, The Color Purple, did I say that?
Yep, yep.
And The Way of the Happy Woman, Living the Best Year of Your Life. I haven't read that. Fierce Medicine.
Wow.
You might like that because of the shamanistic thing. And she's a Anna Forrest for Forest Yoga. Her story,
Okay.
which is really, really amazing. That she has a book about, sort of psychosis and and therapy and how she developed the therapy related on some of the trauma of her childhood. It's really neat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. When did you start performing poetry?
Um, Stone Soup Poetry. I lived in Boston in 2007, 2006, 2007, and I met Chad Parenteau at this art place called Out of the Blue, and they used to hold Stone Soup Poetry. And with Tom Tipton, he was the owner of the shop, and that's where I met him. And I just recently looked him up on Instagram to make friends with him again and joined up with Stone Soup again. That's like
Cool.
10 years, well, more than 10 years, about 15 years later. He looks the
Okay.
same. I think I look a lot different than I did back then. It's
Well,
interesting.
you make a lovely presentation now.
Okay.
Okay, next question. Um, were your teachers encouraging your writing?
Were they encouraging? Uh, there were so many good writers. I never felt like I got much encouragement. No, I'm always have potential. I'm always a potential person. I always have a really good start, and then I'm flooded. I'm just flooded and I don't focus as well. I'm very tangential and I include too much. So it's sort of like kind of like my poems will explain it a little bit because kind of like, I have like a bare minimum and then you're supposed to expand upon that and cite it and everything. And my poems do that a lot better than some research projects and stuff like that. But you're young and you're kind of when you're young, you take offense by things, and well, at least I did, and there's a lot more extracurricular things to focus on that
Okay.
like you try to combine those two. You try to combine your life, like you so much want to put your life into what it is that you do that sometimes you don't. You In retrospect, if I explicated more, that's okay to do, but at the time you don't feel like when you're younger that that's okay. That's your private life, and then there's school. But I think it really is okay to mesh those two things and cite your own experiences as part of their work. So I think that's why the potential's there,
Well,
and
there's
that's
that old axiom, write about what you know. So that it makes sense that you would write about your life experience.
it's conflicting because it's, adolescence is difficult and growing up is difficult. So there's a lot of conflicts. And if you can compare that to what it is you're the narrative, then I guess you could really have something there. You have to be more patient, maybe more patient with what it is and more focused and have more pride in what it is you're doing. Um, so I just do it. I don't see it going anywhere, but you never know.
That's for sure. Now there's a range of opinion about writing, yeah, among poets. There's one school at one extreme end that says write every day. You've got to write every day to polish your craft, to get good at it, whether you're inspired or not. Just write, 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 write. The other end of that spectrum, and it's a big spectrum. The other end of that spectrum is write only when you're inspired. Don't
Hmm.
force it. Don't push it. Wait until the moment is right, and then what flows flows. So in that spectrum, from write every day to write only when you're inspired, where do you fall in that range?
Inspired. That could also add to some of the trouble of not, getting things done and stuff like that, because I definitely have periods where I'm inspired and periods where I'm not. When I go to sculpture every Sunday, I have to force myself to do that and know, and then it comes. But not, but as far as writing or, I dabbled a little bit in picking up a guitar and doing that kind of stuff. It's only when I'm inspired to do it. So it'd be a real discipline to be able to just tell myself, do it. Because you got to get past through, even when you're inspired, you got to get kind of past through the sort of abysmal sort of feeling you're having. And sometimes you have to write about what you're going through in order to get to something like, okay, now I'm somewhere. Now something to work with. But at first you have to kind of go in tangents and stuff to sort of fall in place. But definitely I'm on the school of inspiration.
Okay, let me ask you this: are there themes that you've come back to again and again in your writing?
Well, since I just have a small collection of like, and that's not true. I have a lot of, most of it's very charged and personal, and there's always some sort of analogy to it and a little spite in it, spiting myself and spiting things that are judgmental. So judgment is a big part of it. And then the ones that I've shared that I felt like sharing were a little more picturesque. And I picked the theme of Plato's Cave to talk about what what you experience the birds on the branches outside. And is it birds sort of translate, I'm looking on my paper now, the metaphor for what the insiders are feeling. And it's the proclivities of life in general and your choices you make, though but they're also very contentious. There's an argument there. So it's like a metaphor within inside the metaphor, but it's how these birds on the tree translate to how you're experiencing the outside world through the metaphoric birds on the tree and the light getting through, because the shadows in Plato's cave emit through objects, so you experience what's going outside indirectly, but you're also chained to this. So it's like there's like a psychosis going on. So, and what it's like to be in the light and what it's like to be nascent and born. Um, if that's, I don't even know if I pronounced that correctly, but anyhow, um, and reborn and then back in the cave. So there's a lot of translation and psychological transference and things like that, which you have to be sort of naive and to look at it, right? You have to be naive and allow yourself to be naive, but then you have to look back at what it is you write and translate exactly what you're writing into like its psychological benefits, like what these metaphors actually mean and what it might pertain to, and then rewrite it with what's extend upon. But it's every time you extend upon something, you're creating even more to translate and more transference. And so, but then you go back to being naive and just how it must the a lot of it's not it's illustrating and a lot more illustrating what the feeling part of it all is. And so like there's that between what's sentient, the feeling, and what's nascent, the emerging. So
Okay.
that would be a lot of the qualities of what I might share today. What I'm gonna,
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Okay. Do you think that poets or authors have a responsibility to address contemporary society?
No, I don't think they have a responsibility to do that because
Okay.
depends where you're coming from. You might not have it. What if you have no sense of responsibility at all? Wouldn't you want to know what the content is besides that? I mean, that makes for a lot of exciting stuff. The people that sort of instant gratification and stuff, which is not great. I mean, great for society, but I think if you give people credit, they're able to make something of it and put it in a box and know how you're feeling about something, that it's not necessarily the right way or anything, but you definitely should hear from the naive instant
Okay.
gratification, to get a picture of what that is and why people do what they do. So all
Okay.
sorts of humanity is important.
Okay. Um, if a young person were to ask you, is poetry worth spending time on? What would you say?
Oh, definitely. Definitely, if you could put it into words, if you don't even want to touch on what it is, you can still touch on it through a narrative that's external by looking at something else, or by including it being more direct about what it is you're focusing on, however you want to do it.
Okay. What makes a good poet?
What makes a good poet? Someone like maybe that they can go back and evaluate, to be able to evaluate what it is you're trying to get across, so that you can, so it's a good synthesis of material that you can say where it's coming from, or that for that to be an aim to work through things. So that sort of bridges the narrative of anything goes to at least making the effort.
Okay. Thank you. Is narrative important in poetry?
It's it explains. Yeah. So yeah, it is important, but it doesn't have to be.
Okay.
I mean,
And
yeah.
you already answered the other question about what books you're on your desk. So the final question is, do you have a question for me?
Um, those were good questions. What 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 do you seek something out when you choose a piece to engage in, to involve yourself in, to translate, to memorize, to produce?
I am usually struck either by the turn of a phrase that seems to evoke a whole narrative, or some dilemma, some challenge, some problem, or in the case of my social commentary work and my humorous political work, a problem that absolutely needs addressed in some way that provides entree for a solution.
Okay.
So, for example, on the lighter side, I came from a political rally and I left. I was still wearing a political t-shirt that said "Stop ICE." Okay.
Yeah.
I went into a restaurant. The staff, largely immigrants, saw this and were thrilled. They're like, "Oh my God, I love that shirt." And then I noticed it's one of those restaurants where you can see back into the kitchen. And I see this gentleman kind of glancing furtively around him. He's one of the chefs. He's got a patch over one eye. And it just struck me, the combination of the furtive looks, the really welcoming immigrant staff, this chap as a chef with a patch over one eye, and suddenly out of the clear blue, I said, his name is Sven. And then I knew immediately that not only was his name Sven, but he has changed his name to disguise his identity. And this whole narrative blew up in my head. And a young waitress came over and to take the order. And I said, "Oh, you've got to tell me. You have got to tell me, what is the name of the chef with the patch over one eye?" And she said, "Oh, well, he says to call him Brandon," which just that alone said he's probably not Brandon. He's something else. And it just, I said, "Oh my God, I've got to write this." And then she, realizing that I was churning on this, she goes, "Well, you see, I used to be a social worker, and with all these Trump cutbacks, lost my job. I'm really searching." And it's just feeding my narrative. My head is going crazy with all this. And I said, "Thank you. I'm going to write about this. This is amazing." She said, "You have to come back. You have to come back and tell me." And I said, "I will. I
But
promise."
you kind of have like this sort of like things coming to fruition kind of feeling, like things coming together, it's in the stars for us to meet and things like that. And then you were like something comes to mind and you just thread it in to explaining something, the bigger picture. So
And then,
you still keep the Stop Ice as the predominant
yeah,
part of
it was
story.
seeing Sven back there in the kitchen,
Okay, okay.
and
Then
then
then would
and
be like Scandinavian, right?
yeah,
Okay.
but he's clearly not Scandinavian, but that's okay.
But you could bring in like Odin and the myths and
Oh,
all that kind of stuff because you like
well,
that kind of stuff too.
if you'd like, I
Uh,
will recite that. See, I always, since I'm asking you to perform, I'm asking you to read some of your work.
okay,
I will also read at least one of mine.
good idea.
It's only fair. So
Yeah.
I'll read you that identity poem if you like. If you like.
Yes.
On another hand, I do political cartoons. So, for example, our country, or this country, let's say that, in this country, despite all the evidence, still made Todd Blanche Attorney General. With all the incredible, incriminating evidence, the misdeeds, the bad judgment, the cover-ups, still made him Attorney General. So I drew a cartoon about that this morning.
So
Now,
your collection, oh, sorry, go ahead.
not everyone's going to like it. Not everyone's going to agree. And of course, the cultists will find it abhorrent and offensive, but that's okay. I'm okay with it.
So your plethora of literature would include journals that would be strewn around your desk.
Oh yeah.
Journals, the newspaper.
Yeah, I'm a big newspaper man. And I love the international press
Okay.
because it's a different set of ruling class that reads and writes for them. So I always believe that the best way to get a good sense of what's going on is look at the official lies And if you look at the official lies, you know what they want you to think, and therefore,
Do you have any empathy for the people that have these bad reputations?
well, I'm a Taoist. So as a Taoist, we're all divinity. I mean, there's no exceptions there. I just have found evidence that some people learn very slowly
Okay.
and consequently live a very difficult life.
Do you want to like analyze what their problem is? Like
No,
you
no,
don't.
I
Okay.
just want to make fun of fools.
Okay, just the sort of
That's
the
enough.
the the core mistakes that they're making.
Well, you look at the role of a jokester or a jester, okay? And what do? They make fun of the royal foibles, right? They go, yeah, you say that, and you can get away with it. I mean, you can kill me if you want to with a drop of your hand, but it doesn't make you any less of a fool. And I think that by demystifying, the emperor's new clothes, by demystifying the emperor's fashion, if you will, we all get a little smarter, and maybe a few more people are that terrible thing that the right calls woke. Oh, can you imagine being called woke as opposed to being a sleepwalker doing whatever the bloody hell they want you to do?
But
It's
you want to make the emperor laugh, though. You want him to be able to laugh at himself.
That would be nice. It
Yeah,
certainly beats better than murdering another 100,000 people.
yeah. And then when a Joker would come into the court, that's his job is to, he could be executed if he doesn't make him laugh.
Yeah,
So, to be able to make them be able to laugh at themselves would be a good solution to the problem. And that way you have to have some empathy in order to have the humor.
yeah, yeah. Well, like I said,
But yours is more black and white. You're more black and white, and it's much easier to grasp. You don't have to look for
well,
than what the case in point is.
I was at an environmental conference, and at the table, one of the people who's was the advocate for a particular new environmental group on the scene, and she turned to this table and said, "I'm looking for somebody who does political cartoons. Does anybody know somebody who does political cartoons?" So I put my hand up and I said, "Yeah, I do political cartoons. I've been doing them since, well, let's just say more wars than you'd ever care to think about." And I said, "I can do them. Now, what kind of environmental cartoons do you want?" She said, "Oh, environmental cartoons." And I said, "Well, okay. Now there's environmental issues about air, about water, about wildlife, about pollution, about overdevelopment, about climate. Pick one." She goes, "You whatever. Just send me some of your political cartoons, and we'll look at them. We'll consider because we really want to buy some political cartoons." I said, "Okay." So I sent her two. This was right after, you remember that oil spill where a well blew out in the Caribbean, and there was oil spewing all over the Gulf of Mexico.
That
And
wasn't Exxon.
no, that was a different one.
Okay.
But anyway, uh, then they added Corexit, this chemical that breaks up oil.
Okay.
Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it also breaks up organic molecules, and the skin of fish and sea creatures was being disrupted and lesions and all that stuff, right? So I drew a cartoon at the time where there's two dolphins swimming, and as they're swimming, their fins are falling apart. There's fragments and a trail of blood where they're swimming. And one dolphin says to the other dolphin, "Good thing that there's no problem with this Corexit.
With this one?
There's no problem with the Corexit that they've added to
Okay.
the oil spill." The other one was a pelican, right? And in the background is two windmills. Now, the pelican in the foreground is drenched in oil. There's oil just all over him. And he's looking back at those windmills and he goes, "They are so unsightly." Because one of the complaints about windmills is that there are certain people that find them visually disruptive,
Oh,
as
okay.
opposed to being
Okay.
drowned in oil.
Yeah,
right?
that's the whole
So
essence. Yeah. The,
so I sent these to these to
yeah.
this group, and I didn't hear anything back. I waited a week. I waited a second week. I finally called him. I said, "So did you see them?" "Oh, yeah, yeah, we saw them." I said, "So what did you think? Are they like not your area or what?" And she said, "Oh, they're kind of strong, don't you think?" And I said, "Okay, political cartoons aren't a jeweler's saw. They're a fucking sledgehammer. That's what they're for. They're
Mm.
not to gently convince you of some, they're meant to be in your face."
About the hardship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they said, "Well, these are too strong for us." I said, "Well, give me a theme and I'll do that." "Oh, no, 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 this is it's your work is too powerful." "Okay,
Did you
no
break
problem."
it down for them?
No,
Make it a
I
little more.
figured I explained it about as well as I could, and if they didn't get it, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'll just keep drawing for myself and for the handful of people to think I'm funny.
Yeah, they kind
Okay.
of maybe it needs to belong in like a series of things so they can, so you can dismantle it slowly.
Well, I answer to a higher spirit. I don't
Yeah, you need, well, you answer to some people should know what those problems are if they don't know exactly what the problems are. Like oxygen depriving is eutrophication. So if you just said something about oxygen, like the what, because it's what is the algae depriving the other animals of the oxygen they need.
you know.
You
Well, see,
the nuances are are good, but you don't necessarily, but unless you know the problem, it's not. But a lot of those cartoon people do know what the problem is. They know like all too well, but maybe
I
they just didn't
I
grasp
grew up
it.
in Pittsburgh.
Huh?
I grew up in Pittsburgh with rivers that were red, white, green, blue, orange, and they eventually caught fire. I mean, the river caught fire.
Wow, yeah.
So I know a little something about pollution.
Yeah.
But anyway, enough about me. It is now my favorite part of the interview.
All right.
I turn to my guest, the lovely Jacklyn Bookshire, and say, "Please, would you read some of your work?"
Sure. I'm going to read. I'm going to start with with one, two, three pieces.
As
And
you
they're
wish.
the three pieces. They're all based on Plato's cave. The proclivities, though contentious, the experience within Plato's cave. So my first one is sort of an outline of what it's abstract. It's abstract, but then it gets a little clearer towards the end, even though it's dealing with more information. So proclivities, glare where the shadows casted, a twisted feather quills, self-conscious oblivion. Sentient refractory, seethes an ennobled emotion, unburdened quills, nascent. So these are sort of the themes of which I'm thinking. And then I think, oh, people know what I'm talking about. It's right. It's very abstract. It's hard to know what I'm talking about. Um, Now this is my second one, proclivities. So contentious. Glare, we're talking about birds on limbs outside of Plato's cave. What the birds stand for and what abounds. Proclivities, though contentious. Proclivities. Glare where the shadows casted, limbs and extremities hold promise. Upon the shade, the starkness, a stem to conjoin. Twisted feather quills a self-conscious oblivion, notwithstanding contention, abounding between multitudes. A sentient anomaly refracts, distinct from the nascent, flickering artifices, the populace bathes. Flown from the landscapes, the birds are flying away now from the tree. With topic savvy implications, absence is quickly overshadowed, leaving the stem to flourish. Sun-drenched feathers through shade, amidst sparkling in plenty remembrance, ennobling the arguments, the armament of togetherness. So that's like the argument of kind of life and in the darkness. But it's also when you emerge, you still have that same contention. And what else should I explain? There was something I should explain, but I'll just keep reading.
Please, please.
This is after the birds party on the branches, and how the glare is when there's no bird on a branch. You would probably see more glare coming you see more light coming in. That's the glare. After the argument of light, the bird stays twisted in its feathers, not waiting for the communal bath. The glare softens between branches. Light softens because the bird is in its own little flight of fancy. So the glare softens because of this one bird, the solo bird, between branches. Light transfers the shadows cast through the flock into the cave. Here, shadow dancing is abstract and embarrassing to dance alone. Debt and shallow waters wait on the periphery. It is not proving it belongs. It is untying the shelter of judgment, making sense alone, in a shallow pool of its own light, the self-conscious oblivion. That's my 3 poems. About 2 are about proclivities, and the other one is about the solo bird.
Very nice. Thank you so much.
You want another one?
If you'd like, I'll read one of mine.
Yeah, read one of yours.
I'll read my little poem about my friends at the Greek restaurant.
Okay.
Okay, let's see here. But I regard this as a poem about identity, because I think first and last, my insight was that this chef, Sven, by my my insights prodding, was not what he seemed, and that led me on a trip to explore all these wonderful identities and who was appearing to be who and who was actually something else. So this is called Stanley and Livingston, which is a search of its own. Stanley and Livingston, revision 10. Ariel told this story. She sang and rang the power, the glory of the stranger. Sven, the pirate, when never in a hurry, never ceased to blend, seems like a dream. He washed ashore early one morning, just a wee jot before dawning, when even the rooster, the cloister himself, was still abed yawning. His one glorious eye, not aimed forlorn at the sky, was always looking back to where they'd staged the attack. He raged back to where he lived before. He'd set sail months ago from fair Ithaca's shore and then washed up 7 months later at this busy Greek restaurant's door. Sure, you might guess, looking out at this glorious, notorious mess, what's it all for? Who will confess? He was swallowed up in a swirling, hurling maelstrom, in a sea-tossed storm. He'd given up all hope, or so she told me. Iris had got it into her head. They hadn't dated for months. That was the line she was scornfully force-fed, you see, over a tea and crumpet lunch. Not since dear Gerald, that wry Scot, had recovered from a case of mumps that he got. He washed up on the shore, right on the steps, at this Greek restaurant's door, tangled, mangled, nearly strangled in a bedraggled seaweed net that he'd never forget. But it seemed clear to Iris that this had all happened before. Deja vu right here at her door. I mean, what was this just? What happened? What was this in store? What was it? What were we all here for? He's one hell of a chef, said the manager, Costas, who'd seen many a talented cook, but not one who could top this. Just take a look. Sven knew his way around cooking for sure. He'd walked boldly into the kitchen mere minutes after, crawling clumsily through that front door. Tricia had noticed, and so had old Max. Sven was the sort of character that preferred camouflaging his tracks, regardless of the facts. Ever loose? Begad, never ephemeral was his slacker's loose grasp on the fruity, nutty facts. The patch over his eye had a life of its own. Someone had embroidered on it the tiniest crown and a sparkling little LED throne. Iris, I mean Mary, she had a story to tell. She was undercover doing research for a paperback book she just had to sell. Her research, you see, was part of a study of a lifelong lotion worker who had this history with putty. Putty was the fellow you may well remember more than just a little nutty. He had dated Lorraine, that much was plain. You may remember he was once a sponge diver, a survivor, who'd turned pirate, you see. He lived on his sailboat, a thrifty little frail boat just north of a reef out of reach of the irrepressible thieves. Iris's research on her theory of identity inspired her to regularly change her name in this, the fertile second half of the century, which scarcely deserves any lingering dysentery. Her specialized research then and there was this chef, here named Sven. They collided inside the Greek restaurant when he reliably assured her she made up late one night over a bottle of Chianti. They got sort of romantic, but Sven weird up, tossed back his upended cup, paused, and said, "Please stop me. Don't hop atop me. I just might act with abandon. So, therefore, from now on, dear Iris, you best call me Brandon."
That's good. Lots of dips and peaks.
Yeah, yeah. I normally try to take a narrative someplace special, but in
You
this
rhyme,
case,
a lot of rhyming.
well, yeah, I'm a rhymester. I am. I was told early on. I was at a anti-war conference and I read one of my poems that rhymed. And I was pulled aside by one of the senior poets on staff. He said, "Richard, I don't know if you know it, but rhyming is not done. We just don't do it anymore. It's not liked. It's not appreciated. In fact, it's it's sort of regarded as gauche. So you really shouldn't. I mean, if you want to be taken serious." And I said, "I don't care." I
Well,
said,
it's
"If
not
my
just
muse,
rhyme. It's
pardon
not
me,
just you sort of you recapitulate. You know, you redo the narrative in like a rhyme, but you go in these kind of peaks and valleys with the story building, and it's then it rhymed. So the rhyme is sort of like a circle of a recap. So it's not just roses are red.
yeah." But I've been given that kind of advice before. Recently, there was a group of poets up in the Boston area, not Chad's group, but another one. And this woman was introduced as a senior dean of a literary magazine, quite important in the area. And she said to me, "You know, Richard, you're making two mistakes. If you want to be taken seriously as a poet, number one, don't rhyme. Oh my God, that is so not done. And besides, you rhyme multiple times in one page. And then worse than that, you write humorous poetry. Don't you know that for poetry to be taken seriously, it's got to be about Sturm and Drang. It's got to be about angry people and the abuse that they've
Mhm.
suffered, their terrible lives, and all the pain they've been through. I mean, that's the poetry that gets famous. That's the stuff that we always love to publish." And I said, "I think that's grand." And there are those I know, let's say, the popular movies, explosions, crime, betrayal. I get that. I totally, totally get that. I understand that the popular mind just soaks that stuff up. But you know what? I've had enough of that stuff. I don't watch war. I don't watch murder.
Mm.
Obviously, I lose a lot of popular entertainment that way, but that's okay. I I write what I'm inspired to write, and you know what? If my muse says rhyme a line, by gum, I'm going to rhyme a line. And humor, humor is for me a life vest. It keeps my little life alive because if I didn't have humor, my default mode is melancholy. I know that.
Right, right. So you don't include the melancholy, but you can see through it. you should be able to see through it, but it's still child friendly where you can just rhyme, and that's a rhyme in a boat, and that'll get you there, and that's a skill. It's a skill
Well,
that you need to have in order, that kids could have, that budding writers could have. So that's really stupid to say. Well,
it's
not to
okay.
be judgmental. It's
It's
stupid
a
to
big
say that you
world.
shouldn't rhyme.
It's a big world. I don't mind being wrong in some people's eyes.
Write
But
a
I
poem.
hope you had a little fun.
Do you want me to read a short one?
Please read
Or
two.
read two? Okay. I'll read one that has a little bit of life experience in the drudgery. It's called Working Out.
It's so important.
But it's not all drudgery. It's just kind of making sense of something that happens without, and some feelings arise. So it's not drudgery. Well, that is if you feel bad feelings, unfortunate feelings that the others make you feel, or you believe others make you feel, that that's part of life. So working out. A respite from the workout, breath pattering, a driving force, forward, complete, relishing, and remembering. It's a requiem, they say, shamed for remembrance, a physical totality. They agree, whole, they say, and go on. And yes, in filling these voids, only nooks and crannies deliver. Needs apply, apologizing. Is this the true requiem for including you in the deconstruction? Staving off the antagonists, they're no longer here, nor are you peering in, are you? And in
No,
this one's one it's a bit of a fantasy transference upon a friend. Is it unfair to transfer feelings and fantasies upon a friend? That's the kind of the question that arises from this, and it's called Conversations with a Loved One. Cold, dark dawn and dew seeps inside of me, and you're a soft morning brew. You dig deep to my sea. I could see through you, but I prefer the black. Dig deep to my sea as night rolls on its back. That's it. That's what I got for today.
well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I hope you enjoyed our little chat.
I did. I thought that was wonderful. First experience for me. I've never been interviewed. Never did any of that.
Well,
So
let's just say this is your first one.
this is my first one, and it was nice having a discourse, not just a one-way interview. That was good and enlightening.
Well, good.
Thank you for including me.
Jacklyn, it's been a pleasure to have you as a guest of Poets of the East. Thank you so much for coming. I hope you have a good night.
You too. Cheers.
Bye-bye. Cheers.